In a remote corner of California, far from civilization, there was a village that almost no one knew about. Old maps showed its existence, but for some reason, it had vanished from all modern maps. The legends about it were passed down only by the elders, and most people thought it was all just a tale. But one day, a group of researchers who set out to uncover this mystery stumbled upon the traces of the forgotten place, and their lives would never be the same. The group consisted of 5 people: Eliza, Daniel, Mark, Joanna, and Michael. All of them were passionate about history and archaeology, and when they found an old map marking the location of an abandoned village, they decided to go in search of it. Despite warnings from the locals to stay away from there, the group decided to continue their expedition. They traveled through mountain trails, dense forests, and rushing rivers. Their guides and compasses stopped working, and even their maps seemed inaccurate. At some point, they realized that despite the difficulties, they were on the right path. Soon, they discovered the first signs that the village really did exist: old stone walls covered in moss, remnants of wooden structures hidden underground. But the deeper they ventured into these abandoned lands, the stranger their journey became. The atmosphere in the village felt tense, the air was thick, and the forest around them grew darker and more ominous. Finally, when they reached the center of the village, they saw a house that looked like it hadn't been lived in for many years. Suddenly, the door to the house swung open on its own. Eliza, despite the warnings, stepped inside, and the rest followed. Inside, it was dark and cold, and the air smelled of aged wood and moldy books. On the table lay an ancient book, its title reading, "Do Not Open." But curiosity won out, and Eliza, unable to resist, opened the book. The moment she turned the first page, the entire house trembled from a loud noise, as if the old walls were awakening. Then, strange silhouettes began to emerge from the dark corners of the house, blurred figures resembling shadows. These beings weren't alive, but they looked like people frozen in time. Their eyes were hollow, and their expressions were both sorrowful and cruel. "You've come, now you won't leave," the shadows whispered, and with every word, their forms became clearer. The group tried to leave the house, but the door through which they had entered vanished, as if swallowed by the forest itself. Panic took over as the walls started to move, and the floor beneath their feet began to bend. The shadows grew closer, and their voices filled the space. "We were forgotten, and now you are our successors." Michael, the bravest of the group, tried to find an escape, but the longer they stayed inside, the more they lost touch with reality. After several hours, when it seemed they had given up, Eliza noticed something strange. On one of the walls was a symbol, resembling an ancient ritual. She reached out and touched it, and suddenly everything around them disappeared. The house was gone, and the forest returned to its normal, dead silence. They found themselves back in the open space, but the village was no longer there. Where it had stood, only the ordinary forest remained, just as before. None of them could remember how they left the place. Their return to the city was long and exhausting, and when they told people what had happened, no one believed them. But Eliza always felt the eyes of those who remained in the forgotten house watching her. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she thought she could hear those whispers again, promising that she would never leave that forgotten village.